When I realized Santa didn't exist, I thought I was the only person who knew. So at 7 years old, I decided to save Christmas by playing Santa for my family that year. Christmas Eve arrives, and I run into my parents also playing Santa. Yeah, that was an awkward conversation. But my parents eventually shared how learning about Santa's fictionality was also disappointing for them growing up. They told me they were just as disillusioned as I was. But knowing this truth empowered them to preserve the magic for me, the next generation. Now, I find that really interesting. And not just because it made me never fully trust my parents again. I'm just kidding. No, I found it interesting because it implied that disillusionment, which is the disappointment upon realizing something isn't as good or as magical as you thought it to be, that disillusionment is the key to continuity. Think about it. No child gets a Santa unless their parents understand that Father Christmas is really just that, your father on Christmas. And so, in the emotional toolkit needed to affect change, disillusionment is a necessary feeling. Most of you here today are like me. You're young and finding your way in the world. A world brimming with opportunities to fast track your dreams. But the truth is, we're entering a world of Santa Clauses. And that means at every twist and turn, we'll come to see things for what they are, rather than what we hoped or assumed they would be. And it doesn't get easier each time. But here's the cool part. That's not a bad thing. Disillusionment is a powerful feeling that can be used for good, especially in the context of sustainable change-making. Let me illustrate. Last year, I started interning with the All Women's Action Society, AWAM, a Malaysian women's rights NGO founded in 1985 with the purpose of addressing gender-based violence. Now, AWAM is one of the key NGOs in Malaysia's 30-year-long fight for a standalone sexual harassment bill. Back in October 2020, I saw AWAM's online petition to table the Sexual Harassment Bill. And honestly, it was only then that I learned Malaysia has no specific laws comprehensively protecting everyone from every type of sexual harassment. And that the few we do have are severely limited. In fact, let's imagine for a moment that you want to make a report. Let's say you've been sexually harassed and you want legal recourse. Well, for starters, the only place you will find a legal definition of sexual harassment is under the Employment Act. So let's play it out from there. If you're not a full employee, maybe you're a student or an intern, you're not covered. If you were harassed in a public space, like a bus, a shop, or even the street outside of your office, you're not covered. In fact, what do you have in front of you right now? Your phone, your laptop, the online world. If you were sexually harassed right now on this medium, you wouldn't be covered. But for argument's sake, let's just say you can use the Employment Act. Well, that's great. Now, do you have physical evidence or witnesses? Because the burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt. Beyond a reasonable doubt, that is an incredibly tall order, given the nature of sexual harassment and the fear factor involved in speaking up as a witness. And yet, these are the barriers faced by survivors of sexual harassment right here in Malaysia. Which also means these are the barriers faced by over 1 in 3 women and 1 in 6 men. As a matter of fact, everything I just outlined came from actual experiences of real people who turned to AWAM after they've been failed by our current laws. And so in real time, I saw AWAM and other NGOs push for a bill that could address all of this. And I knew I needed to help. So what followed was a 3-month journey of ups and downs. In October, we started the social media campaign, #AWAM for the bill and #Rakyat for the bill. And it was thrilling. We managed to galvanize everyday Malaysians to take a stand, be it signing our online petition, sharing information, donating, and writing to their MPs. We got the Rakyat, that is, the people of Malaysia, involved in ways they didn't even know they could be. And that's not all. In the span of a single month, AWAM received over 100 calls just from supporters asking how they could help ensure the bill gets passed. But then in mid-November, we learned that the bill would not be tabled. The draft just wasn't ready. Now, instead of waiting another year, AWAM chooses to pivot. AWAM pivots with a paper petition, which is a first in legislative history, to at least invoke discussion on sexual harassment among our elected representatives. Taking the support of over 500 paper petition signatures, we then counted a victory in December when YB Kasturi Pato stood to read our paper petition in Malaysian Parliament. In an act of amazing bipartisan support, YB Ahmad Mazlan of UMNO provided the necessary seconding to allow our cause a spotlight. It was incredible to create history and push this years-long fight a step forward. But really, the wow moment for me was seeing that ever crucial pivot after November. Getting knocked down only to rise back up and do something no one had seen before. So let's dig deeper into how AWAM did that. You see, when the bill failed to be tabled in November, the person on the team feeling most defeated and dejected was me, the young intern who joined about a month ago. Because it was a huge Santa Claus moment. Only in place of Santa's red coat was bureaucratic red tape, carefully concealing a disappointing, lackluster reality. And yet, while I was feeling so defeated, I looked around me and saw something entirely different. The AWAM staff and other allies approached November as a disappointment, but not a deterrent from fighting back harder and better. I had to realize that if things were as simple as I naively thought, we wouldn't still be here, fighting the same fight for 30 years. And so by understanding the realities of what they were up against, AWAM was able to turn a setback in November into an opportunity. Because we ended up setting the fight for a sexual harassment bill on a more sustainable trajectory, rallying more public support than ever before, and putting us in the books as the first ever paper petition brought to Malaysian Parliament. Now that is the power of applying disillusionment in the grand scheme of change-making. So when things don't go the way you expect, allow yourself that moment of clarifying disillusionment. Because you can and really should feel disillusioned. Just don't relinquish hope because of it. In 2020, while fighting for the Sexual Harassment Bill, AWAM's Telenita helpline received 802 cases. That is 802 cases ranging from sexual harassment and domestic violence to mental health and financial hardship. In December, the very month we took the paper petition to Parliament, we were also racing against nearly a case a day of sexual harassment. And at first glance, that may look like persevering against disillusionment. But actually, knowing the dire reality of what was at stake fueled our resilience. It's not lost on AWAM how significant it was that even in the time of a pandemic, supporters came in and out of our office, thanking us for fighting so they might live without the fear of being sexually harassed and having no real laws to protect them. Knowing how deeply unfair it is for people to go about their everyday lives in that fear kept us going. Again, there is power in applying disillusionment. And so if there is one thing that I want you to take away, it is this. Inherent in the very definition of disillusionment is the eye-opening realization that something isn't as good as you believed it to be. Now that is an uncomfortable feeling. No one enjoys finding out Santa's not real. But we shouldn't be afraid of it. Disillusionment is not an enemy we have to overcome. It is a tool that empowers us to inspire change that will last. Because discovering something you thought was working is actually broken, that is an invitation to fix it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the power of disillusionment. Thank you very much.